Ya, halo, jumpa kembali dalam Insight. Topik kita malam ini berkaitan dengan Hari Sadar Autisme Sedunia. Nah, autisme bagi sebagian kalangan itu kerap dianggap sebagai suatu penyakit. Namun autisme merupakan gangguan perkembangan kompleks akibat struktur dan fungsi otak yang tidak berkembang sempurna. Penyandang autistik memiliki keterbatasan berkomunikasi hingga sulit mengekspresikan diri. Namun tidak berarti orang dengan autisme tidak mampu berprestasi. Lalu, bagaimana cara mengasuh dan mendidik anak autis? Dan bisakah autisme itu disembuhkan? Kita bahas tentang autis secara lengkap dalam Insight bersama saya, Desi Anwar. Autisme atau gangguan perkembangan anak dalam komunikasi, interaksi, dan sosialisasi pada usia di bawah 3 tahun itu bukan jalan buntu. Salah satu buktinya adalah Dr. Stephen Shaw, seorang penyandang autistik sekaligus peraih doktoral di bidang pendidikan.
Terlalu fokus pada detail. Itulah salah satu sifat penyandang autistik menurut Profesor Stephen Shaw. Stephen Shaw yang meraih doktoral dalam bidang pendidikan ini adalah seorang dengan autisme. Ia didiagnosis autisme kuat sewaktu kecil. Ia bahkan tidak bisa berbicara hingga usia 4 tahun. Masa-masa awal sekolah cukup memberatkan baginya, karena ia sering kali kesulitan berkomunikasi. Namun, orang tua Stephen tidak menyerah. Mereka tidak fokus pada kekurangan Stephen dan justru memicu segala kekuatan dan bakat lain yang dimilikinya.
I am extremely grateful for what my parents did for me as a child. If it is only because of what my parents did for me that I am where I am today.
Di Indonesia saat ini belum ada data pasti jumlah penyandang autistik. Namun, di Amerika, tempat asal Stephen, 1 dari 86 anak termasuk dalam spektrum autistik. Kehadiran Stephen Shaw kemudian menjadi gambaran bahwa dengan arahan yang tepat, penyandang autistik bisa menjadi yang terbaik di bidangnya.
Untuk melihat bahwa anak-anak ABK ini bisa dibantu, mereka juga layak, dan mereka juga harus punya hidup yang lebih baik gitu. Sama haknya dengan anak-anak lain gitu yang juga punya kesempatan untuk hidup lebih baik gitu. Nah, anak-anak ABK juga mereka juga harus punya kesempatan untuk bisa punya hidup yang lebih baik gitu.
Penyandang autistik memang memiliki beberapa tantangan dalam hidupnya. Hal itu tidak menyurutkan harapan bahwa mereka bisa berkontribusi di masyarakat.
Selalu dengan dukungan orang tua, komitmen orang tua, mereka bisa menjadi seseorang yang luar biasa hebat.
Stephen Shaw kini mendedikasikan hidupnya untuk membantu penyandang autistik di seluruh dunia agar dapat hidup lebih baik. Katrina Inandia, Jakarta.
Ya, didiagnosis mengidap autisme yang kuat dan tak mampu berbicara hingga usia 4 tahun, Stephen Shaw justru menyelesaikan jenjang pendidikannya hingga menjadi profesor di Universitas Adelphi, Amerika Serikat. Langsung saja kita sapa Dr. Stephen Shaw yang sudah berada bersama saya di studio. Halo, Dr. Shaw.
Hello.
Stephen, it's good to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Jakarta. And I hear it's your first time in Jakarta.
Yes, it is. This is the 41st country I have presented on autism in.
So, 41st country and Jakarta is one of the
It's the
cities
41st.
that,
Yes.
The 41st, oh my
Yes.
goodness.
Yes.
How long are you in Jakarta for?
Oh, only for 36 hours for this trip.
Way too short.
Oh, very short,
Yeah.
but it means that I have to come back.
Okay, tell us about the presentation. This is the 41st city, but you know, you've been sort of from one country to the other holding your seminar on autism. Tell us
Correct.
a little bit about it.
Sure. Well, yesterday I gave a 3-hour workshop, and the focus was on opening doors to opportunities for individuals on the autism spectrum. And what I did was focus on how we can look at the characteristics of autism to use them as strengths. Because so often we look at autism with what I call a deficit model, We so often talk about deficit, disorder, and disability. And while there are significant challenges to having autism, and if there weren't, we wouldn't be here trying to figure it out, we also have to be aware of the often significant strengths people with autism can bring to the community.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit more about the characteristics?
Oh, sure. So in autism, for example, we find differences in communication. Some of us on the autism spectrum may have great difficulty speaking and may need to find different ways to communicate, such as using pictures or sign language. But it can go all the way to the other end as well, where some of us are very verbal and we may be able to communicate better than the average.
Like you yourself, you're very articulate, you're very verbal, and I mean, you're a man of science, you're a professor, you're an author, you are, I mean, basically you're very highly educated, and yet you also are diagnosed with autism. Could you tell me a little bit more specific about your type of the autism that you yourself suffer from?
Well, sure. After 18 months of typical development, I was struck with what I call the autism bomb, otherwise known as regressive autism. So at 18 months, I lost functional communication, had meltdowns, withdrew from the environment, and in brief, I became a very severely affected child on the autism spectrum. There was so little known about autism in those days that it took my parents a full year to find a place for diagnosis. And when they did, I was then 2.5, and the doctors said they had never seen a child who was so sick. But the doctors recommended institutionalization. In those days, the diagnosis of autism was tantamount to a life sentence in an institution. Fortunately, my parents, like we see so many parents today, they advocated on my behalf and convinced the school to take me in about a year. And it was during that year my parents implemented what we would today refer to as being an intensive home-based early intervention program, emphasizing music, movement, sensory integration, narration, and imitation.
So what was your education then like? I mean, were you in a class with other children, or were you like, homeschooled, or I mean, what sort of education did you actually receive?
Well, at that point, between 2.5 and 4 or so, today we would call it a homeschooling. And there was a lot of music, there was movements. My parents would sing to me, we'd move to music. My parents would engage in narration, which means running commentary on the activities of what I did. And with all the work that my parents did, speech began to return at age 4.
Age 4, so you started
Yes.
talking at age 4.
I started talking again. So at 18 months, I was as verbal as any 18-month.
So you were already babbling when you were 18 months, and then you lost it. And then
That's right, and that's regressive autism, and about half of us on the autism spectrum have regressive autism.
Oh. And then how did you feel when you were growing up, and what kind of challenges did you face, and what were your particular difficulties that you yourself faced? And
Well, after regaining my ability to speak, which was at about 5.5, I entered regular school kindergarten at age 6, and I was a social and academic catastrophe. I didn't know how to get along with my classmates in a way that they understood or could appreciate. I guess repeating the letter B over and over again while walking about the room didn't endear me to my classmates. So as a result, there was a lot of bullying, there was a lot of teasing, and fortunately these days, school systems are beginning to realize that bullying is not a developmental phase that people need to go through. Academically, I was usually about a grade behind in most of my subjects, all through elementary school, so grades K through 6. At the same time, I was fascinated with school because I knew that I could go into the library and get books on my favorite subject. So whatever I was interested in, it might have been earthquakes, weather, astronomy, aviation, a number of things. And I'd get all the books from the library, I'd stack them on my desk, I'd read them, take notes, copy diagrams, and that was a lot of my elementary school education.
could you remember feeling unhappy or frustrated, and when you were being bullied, did you feel that why am I different, or is there something? How did you actually feel?
Well,
what did the world look like to you?
Well, being bullied made me, it made me anxious. It was fearful because I always had to worry about students beating me up after school, being made fun of. So it definitely was a very bad feeling, being bullied.
But who were the most important people then in your life? I mean, were your parents? Did you feel that they, were they there all the time? And did you have good teachers who really understood you, and good doctors who helped?
Yes, I definitely did. So we'll start with my parents. And the only reason that I am where I am today is that my parents accepted me for who I was as a child, significantly affected with autism, but at the same time, they knew that there was a lot of work that needed to be done if I were to lead a fulfilling and productive life. Then as we move on to, as I get a little bit older, I can think of a few psychiatrists, psychologists, teachers who seemed to understand me, and I guess the commonality was that even though I had autism, they weren't out to cure autism, but they were out to help me work with the autism. And to today, I attribute my success to my lovely wife, to whom I've been married to for over 25 years.
Oh, that's great. And you are visiting countries all over the world and giving seminars, and well, I mean, it's great to see that you are such a good influence, and also, opening doors. I mean, what exactly does it mean? What is the main message of the seminars and presentations that you give?
The main message is that we need to look at the characteristics of autism. We need to reframe how we look at them from a deficit model, and say, instead of saying the person has a deficit in communication and social interaction, for example, let us say the characteristics of their communication, which might be very literally minded or database minded, for example, and the type of socialization they have, and let's use those skills and use those characteristics, for example, for employment that society may be in need, in which these individuals can provide a service and likely do a better job than a typical coworker.
Okay, well, let's take a little break, Stephen, but we will come back and explore some more of this. And kita akan lanjutkan perbincangan bersama Dr. Stephen Shaw untuk mendengar lebih banyak lagi kisah kehidupannya sebagai individu autistik. Tetaplah bersama Insight. Masih dalam Insight, meski menyandang autis, kedua orang tua Stephen tidak memasukkannya ke sekolah khusus. Stephen justru didorong untuk mengembangkan kemampuannya melalui musik dan menyanyi. Nah, bagaimana musik misalnya membantunya menghadapi autisme? Kita masih bersama Dr. Stephen Shaw. Stephen, you mentioned that part of your education is through music. So,
right.
How did music help, and are you still very much into music?
Music has helped me a lot. It continues to help me a lot, and I remain very much involved in music. So starting from an early age, I suppose I could say I've been listening to music since my prenatal days, before I was born, because my parents always had music on in the house. Usually it was classical and some folk music. And then when I got struck with the autism bomb, music played a large role in my life, or our life, as my parents and I, we would move to music, sing to music, and do things to music. My first instrument was the piano. I started lessons at age 6, and I think the best thing I learned from those lessons at age 6 was how not to teach somebody with autism how to play the piano.
Okay. Is there a special way that you should teach children with autism to play the piano?
I believe there is. And I believe the method has to focus on experience, or the experiential. So working with music, engaging the child in activities and fun activities, where perhaps at the beginning the act of reading and making music is secondary, and to the child's point of view, we're just having fun cutting and drawing and pasting and moving things around and matching things up. So with music, music really helped in middle and high school, because in middle school I joined the band.
Oh, okay.
And now I had a structured activity in which to mediate my interactions with others.
And you enjoyed that?
I enjoyed it a lot. And music became so interesting to me that I got it into my head that I needed to learn how to play all the instruments. And I would spend hours in the instrument closet taking apart instruments, putting them back together again, figuring out how they worked, buying introductory books, lesson books on these instruments, and teaching myself how to play them. So I got about maybe 12 to 14 instruments down.
Wow.
Then as I continued on, I studied music at the college level. I got a bachelor's and a master's in music education and did all the coursework for a doctoral degree in music education. But then autism started becoming really interesting to me. I defected over to the School of Education and ended up with a doctorate in special education.
Okay, so yeah, tell me about that journey of you becoming a doctor in autism and the challenges to get there, to becoming an academic and then to finally become a professor. I mean, even a lot of non-autistic people don't reach that kind of high standard of education. What was your journey like, and why were you motivated to do education and be an educator?
Well, I've always been interested in teaching, and with my interest in music, I felt I could put the two together and become a music teacher, probably a music teacher in a public school. As things continued on, I ended up as a professor of music at a college in the Boston area. And that was very enjoyable, and I did that for about 5 years. However, I began to get more interested in autism, mainly because I realized that whereas previous to that time, I thought being on the autism spectrum was something of the past. And if somebody had asked me, "Are you autistic?" I would have said, "Well, yeah, I guess I was when I was a child, but that's all done now." But
you don't feel you're autistic anymore? Basically.
Well, I do.
You do?
Because I was encountering some challenges at the end of my doctoral degree in music that related to some comprehensive exams. And that made me wonder, is this autism thing still there? Do I still have it? Is it still affecting me? So I went and got myself a neuropsychological exam and found indeed the autism was still there, and it was affecting me in some subtle and not so subtle ways.
Such as?
In terms of processing music that was relatively less structured than perhaps Baroque music or music of the classical era. And in doing that, and that explained to me why all through my career, and you might say time as a student in higher education and in music in particular, why was it so difficult for me to analyze music of the Romantic era? And I found the reason why is that music of the Romantic era is slightly less structured than classical and Baroque. And it was this relative lessening of the structure that confused me as I was trying to analyze the music.
Okay, well, that's amazing, though, Stephen, the fact that you are using yourself as a subject for analysis in order to understand about you yourself and how you function. Now, do you find that, since you're a child and obvious now, that the world, the medical profession, or people in general understand more about autism, what it is exactly, and the kind of treatment and education that people with autism should receive? It's there, an improvement in that area?
Well, I think we're in a very exciting period of time. We're in a period of time where more and more people, organizations, companies, and entire countries are becoming more aware of what autism is. And with this greater awareness comes research, comes knowledge, comes acceptance of people on the autism spectrum. And acceptance doesn't mean you have autism and we're just going to leave it alone. It means understanding that a person has autism and understanding how to work with the autism. And as we continue to work towards acceptance, the next level, which I'm beginning to see in a number of places around the world, is appreciation. And that's appreciating people with autism for whom they are and for the strengths and contributions they can give to society. And I'm seeing examples in companies such as Microsoft or SAP. And both of these companies have vowed to hire 1% of their workforce of people on the autism spectrum because they recognize that many of us on the autism spectrum have significantly high-level IT skills. However, it's also important to realize that there's great diversity in autism, and not all of us are IT geeks, but we have skills in other areas, and that people are paying more attention to that as well.
Yeah, and do you still see people, regard autism, and you mentioned the deficit, as a sort of something they're afraid of? It's a disease, it's an illness, it's something that needs to be fixed or cured, and is that something of a challenge when you're diagnosed with autism?
That remains a challenge. Remains a challenge in a number of places, and I think you described it very well. It's a lack of knowledge. People are afraid of what they don't know. A parent has a child who suddenly becomes non-communicative, doesn't want to be held, screams in pain when they try to give them a hug. And of course the parent is going to want to do anything they can, anything possible, to help that child. And for many people that comes out as the word cure and elimination. But I think what we're all looking for and what we all can agree on, parents, autism organizations, and everybody else involved in autism, is that we want to reduce suffering of people with autism and at the same time promote fulfilling and productive lives.
Mm-hmm. Can people with autism really lead fulfilled, independent, productive lives? I mean, well, obviously you're an example of that, but in general, I mean.
Well, I believe we can lead fulfilling and productive lives. And what we need to do is we need to find a way to maximize the potential of everybody on the autism spectrum. And just like autism is a spectrum, potential is a spectrum. And the way I see it is that if the person with autism is living a life that's productive and fulfilling, then they're successful, whatever that may be.
And for the last few years, you've been traveling all over the world and enlightening people about autism and so on. Do you feel that you're making a difference? Do you feel that people are listening, and do you have feedback about what they say and think about your presentation in your seminar?
Yeah, I do feel like I'm making a difference. I feel that I'm helping people understand more about what autism is and helping people reframe the characteristics of autism from a deficit-based model to an abilities-based model. And when I give my presentations, while I like to focus on strengths and abilities, I feel it's also important to be realistic and to address and remediate for those significant challenges that come with autism.
Mm-hmm. And we as a society should understand autism more and should basically include people diagnosed with autism in all aspects of our lives.
Right, and the key is to find ways to meaningfully include people on the autism spectrum.
Okay, well, Dr. Stephen, it's such a pleasure having you here, and I hear you have to fly back to the United States, so you'll be doing more seminars. Is this something that you do on a regular basis?
I do this do seminars on a regular basis. I probably speak at about 50 or 75 seminars a year. For example, I'll head down to New York, or back to New York. I'll teach my course at Adelphi University. The next day I'll drive down to Philadelphia and participate on an employment summit for people on the autism spectrum. There'll be a few other things to do, followed by a workshop at a school in Brooklyn, right outside of New York, at the end of the month.
It sounds like you have a very, very busy schedule. Well, best of luck to you.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us here
My
on
pleasure.
Insight. And I hope next time you can come back for a longer period so you can actually enjoy some of the sites here in Indonesia.
I look at this trip as just an introduction to what I can explore.
Oke, iya, dan sejauh mana individu autistik mampu bersosialisasi dan bisakah autisme disembuhkan? Kita akan bahas lengkapnya setelah informasi berikut ini. Tetaplah bersama Insight.